We tend to think of the customer management as being around consumers, but actually, let's not forget that we should also be talking about business to business. Now, it's not just business to consumer, it's business to business. And therefore, we need to think about things like, how do you engage with a client like that? Your client could be Microsoft. Your client could be Apple, and you could be a small little local provider. So that's a different type of relationship as well. So business to consumer, business to business, it is different, but it's the same. I think the same ethos sort of works. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and wrap this module up. We've been looking at the different ways that we deal with customers. We've been talking about some of the practice skills that we support customer retention. We're going to talk about that right now. And then we're learning from examples of different organizations. So we've talked about a few different organizations. So what we'll do is I'm going to go through a couple of things first of all, and then we'll do a run through the brief. Brandon. So you're like you're a service provider. Look, so if you're dealing with a client one-on-one or you're dealing with a class, you're dealing with a client organization. So you're dealing with humans. I meant human clients as individuals, as individual humans. You're dealing with a client organization. Now, of course, as humans, you're interfacing with and you're facing off against, but they represent a bigger organization. So they are actually the same thing, but we treat them differently, but they are the same thing, really. And the better we look after our customers, the better the relationship, the deeper the relationship, the longer it's going to last, the more value we're going to give and we're going to get out of that relationship over time. This thing we talked about, this customer lifetime value piece. I really think that the direct connection is really important, even if it is business to business, even if you're talking with many, many people, trying to make a direct connection with individuals. There was an Irish politician from a place called Limerick, a town down in Ireland. It's outside of Dublin. And he was famous for being he knew everybody, it seemed, and everybody knew him. And he was very much a local politician who got on very well and always elected at the top of the poll every election, and famously so. And part of his technique was he really engaged with his constituencies, his locals. Now, whether he was good, whether he was bad, I'm not even getting into his record as in terms of voting in the government or minister. I think he might have been a junior minister at some point. That's not what's interesting me with this. What he did was he made everybody feel special. Now, some politicians can do this a lot, but this guy was great. I remember one story, one way he explained it to somebody, he said, it's always important to try and address somebody by name. So if I'm one of Kingsley's clients, Kingsley might turn around and say, "Hi, Shane, how are you getting on today?" Or "How did you get on last weekend?" Or even remember something from a previous conversation. But if Kingsley uses my name, I feel a connection. If I'm talking with a customer, I try to use their name as well. We get a connection, which is difficult for me because I'm not really good on names. I'm better on faces than on names, but I can't always link up the name with the face, which is why what I'm about to say to you is interesting. So what this guy, his name was Jim Kemmy, what he used to do was, when he was walking into a venue or into a meeting, whatever, and he's saying hello to everybody, he's doing the political thing and he's shaking hands and everything else, he might say to somebody, he said, "Oh, what's this your name is again?" And which kind of is worrying to me, first of all. But then, so somebody might say, "My name is John." "Oh, no, I know John. I know you're John. I mean, what's your surname?" And that way he was breaking the ice. Now, if John said, "My name is Murphy." "Oh, no, I know you're Murphy, but what's your first name again?" I meant. So he was on his feet and he was sucking information out of the individual and using it at the same time, trying to build on that connection. He might have not known the guy's name at all, but by just engaging and by being quick on his feet with the answer, he was able to have that personal touch, like that personal touch. And it covers a multitude of sins in one way, but it is that personal connection. And it works in business to business, it works in business to consumer, it works consumer to consumer, it works everywhere. It is just networking. So let's move on. I was talking about Zappos. Remember we were talking about Zappos the last day. Your ex-boss used to do it. It worked. I mean, it does work. It can make a connection. I remember I used to work in a school and I always made it a point to have time for some of the people in the school who didn't get as much attention, who didn't get the same, because 25 years ago, 30 years ago, there was a hierarchy in some education here in schools. You might have the teachers and the principal, the professionals were all up here. And then you might have the office workers, and then you might have the cleaners and the porters and so on. I always made a point to talk with the porters. We were all in the same building effectively. I always had a word for the porters, and I engaged with them, and I had a moment to chat with them, just being human. But that paid off time and time again, because if I needed something done, they were more than happy to help out. Whereas I know there were other teachers who were a little bit loftier, who saw themselves as above everybody else. And it didn't work as well for them, because if they ran into a problem, the porters of the kids weren't as inclined to help them, didn't make themselves as visible or as available when there was a problem. Whereas if I had a problem, we were a team. I'd help them out with something, they'd help me out with something. And that's the way, it works best. So I've always tried to make sure that it's so important to treat everybody with respect, no matter where they are in the company. So we were talking about Zappos, and we were making the point that this is Zappos's office. And we looked at Zappos's website, and we saw that the phone number to call is front and center. It is on the first page of their website, at the top where you look first. Zappos wants its customers to be able to call and talk to a real person. And that was the lesson. Because out of that, Zappos, which is an internet retailer, has no other way to engage with its customers. So they want to talk. That was the whole point. That was the whole point with Zappos. The number is front and center. They want to hear from you. They don't want to hear from everybody all the time, but their number is available 24/7, and they answer the phone. So, when you go to a website, you scroll down. I always scroll down because I'm looking for the contact details, and it's always at the bottom if it's there. Theirs is at the top. You don't have to go any further. It's right there, top line of the website, and it says 24/7. And they make a virtue out of answering the phone and talking to people. And part of their training when they're recruiting people, when they're training people, is to seek out staff who buy into that idea, who are willing to talk to customers, who understand what customer service is. So much so that there's a couple of famous stories about Zappos. This is a picture of they're based in Las Vegas. This is a picture of their store. This is a part of the Zappos team. That's their logo. They wow the customer. So Zappos, if you wanted to work with Zappos, if you apply for a job at Zappos, that's American. It has to be American, right? I'm pretty sure it's only in America. It's not here. If you wanted to work with Zappos, you apply to Zappos and you go through an interview process, and they offer you a job. So they check you out. What they say is, we're going to train you. So we're going to give you 2 weeks training or a month's training, whatever it is. We're going to train you. We pay you, obviously. You started with us, so we start to pay you. At the end of your training period, we will pay you $2,000 to go away, to leave. The reason I say that is they only want people to stay after training. They only want people to stay and work for them if they're committed to the organization, if they're committed to the training and the ideas that they've brought up in the training. Because those ideas are that we must engage with the customer, and we go the distance for the customer. So what they're saying, you can leave now, you can go to another job, you can start another job tomorrow, and we'll give you $2,000 to go away. You can take the money, you can go away, no strings attached. So we'll pay you for what you've done, and we'll give you money to go away. Because that doesn't make sense. You join, you interview, you join, you team up, you go to the training, you find out if you like the organization, they do all the training with you, and then they say, okay, if you really want to work here, we want you to give up this $2,000 that we will give you if you leave right now. What effect does that have? What do you think? So it makes you serious about the job. So Kingsley goes along, he trains. Brandon is the training manager, and Brandon says to Kingsley, Okay, Kingsley, listen, we've been through training. You've done very well. That's great. We'd love you to stay. But what we're going to do is we're going to give you $2,000 if you leave right now. If you decide to stay, we won't give you $2,000. You can stay and you can work, but you don't get the $2,000. So if Kingsley decides to stay, it means he's serious about the job. It means he's going to be committed to the job, or there's a much better chance he'll be committed. If Kingsley decides, I really want to work with these guys, give me the money, takes the money, goes away, well, it costs the company some money. It's a win in the longer term because they don't end up putting Kingsley on a phone to end up talking to a customer and to annoy that customer because he's not happy in his job. So it's quite a serious investment by the company. And that sort of sets up the tone for everything. So you look at this picture, there's lots of companies where they show smiley, happy faces. What that means is that the people who work with Zappos tend to be quite committed. And everything that we've seen, like in the previous picture and this and other examples, it's all about how Zappos actually inculcates, how it embeds a customer service attitude within its team. Let me just see, there's a short video clip. Let me just see if I have it to hand here, which I might show you just before I give you a couple of other quick examples. So let me go to this here.
What if I told you that trying harder is in fact the worst way to make massive changes happen in your life? Albert Einstein said that the definition of insanity.
When I first applied, I was a CLT member. I was on the phone wowing customers. It was kind of a challenge because where I've come before, because I worked in call centers, we were always telling our customers no. But working here at Zappos when I first started out was amazing because they gave us all the tools to be successful.
I've been here 12 years straight. There have been people that have left for some amount of time and have come back and have solidified that thought that there is no place like Zappos.com.
You come to work wanting to come to work, not regretting, oh my God, what's gonna happen today? I don't wanna be at work. But I love it. You wake up in the morning and you're happy and you know you're coming to a happy place.
You know what makes Zappos Zappos is the fact that a guy like me can be in the position that I'm in right now with no formal training, 0 days of college. It was always very important to us to make sure we pick the absolute best people because I feel like that's important in the continuation of our culture.
I remember one time we had this company party and in the middle of the night he was walking around giving out tacos. I mean, what other CEO would do that? And that sticks with you. And to me, wow is really not just meeting, but exceeding expectations. And that's in our work with understanding customers is we need to understand their expectations so that we can exceed them.
Zappos invests in their employees, and from the people to the events to the activities. One of our core values is to be a little weird, and we definitely have that here. It's a safe place to be who you want to be.
Time flies by when you're having fun, and I've never felt that to be more true than looking back and saying, oh my gosh, I've spent more than a decade in this building, and it feels like I just started yesterday.
Never before Zappos have I experienced this kind of really innovative company culture that puts employees as people first.
It's just great that we can have the fun that we do while still doing what I feel like is important work.
If you ever think about coming to us, you will have a good time. You will have an extra 1,600 family members that will love and cherish you because we're always looking for amazing people.
So that's very much a promo, a recruitment promo for Zappos. Of course, it's Zappos created it. It's their piece. But it illustrates some of the people they have, and they're telling their stories. But if you put that with what I told you about the $2,000 and the process, you start to see a commitment that they have around people. And that's at the heart of their customer management strategy. That's at the heart of what they do. So let me just go back here. So let me just go back here to illustrate this a bit further. So these are some of the people who would be in the organization, just like in they're not necessarily in the video, but it's the same sort of atmosphere. And you see that with the pictures and everything else. That translates into their commitment when talking to customers. So part of the thing is that there's no pressure on a customer loyalty representative, as you saw them called, to get off the phone with the customer. If the customer picks up the phone and calls Zappos and wants to talk about something, the customer rep is empowered to talk to the customer. They can talk to them as long as the customer wants to talk. There's no pressure to get off the phone. In other organizations, the customer service, two of the customer service sort of things are average speed of answer. The call is answered within 2 seconds or 4 seconds or 10 seconds. We don't want somebody hanging on the phone for 20 seconds waiting for the phone to answer. And the other thing is average call time. We want to try and keep the call time down because we want to get our staff churning through the calls. We want more calls handled. Now, it's a bit of a rush to the bottom because it's a bit like quality. If we're pursuing a low-cost strategy, we're compromising on quality, and that has a negative impact on our business. The opposite of that is if we produce a quality strategy, we're boosting our quality, it actually saves us money in the longer term. And we talk about that in another module, but it's the same idea with this, actually. I think the more open and engaged you are with your customers, the less pressure there's going to be on your customer service line. And so Zappos staff are encouraged to talk to their customers. They're empowered in different ways. So there are a few examples of this that sort of stick out. So the record for the longest call time with a Zappos customer is 10 hours, 29 seconds. Now that's pretty serious. It's pretty, let's say that's like a relationship, but it actually happened. And it involved a customer service rep who got talking with a customer rang up about something, and there was something obviously upsetting a customer about something and something in the background, and they got talking about it. And this guy ended up, now the customer may have had some issues, ended up talking to the customer for 10 hours, 29 minutes. And that sounds absolutely absurd. And I'm sure it's extremely unusual for calls to go on any length like that. But the call was not terminated. There was no pressure from the Zappos employee, from their supervisor, to terminate the call. There was no pressure to get off and get onto other calls. Okay? So the customer service rep is empowered to engage with the customer, to talk to the customer, to solve the customer's problems as much as they can do. So there are stories about how a customer rings up and I've got a problem with something, and it's nothing to do with Zappos, but the Zappos rep will say, hang on a second, let's see what we can find here. And they might do some internet searching with the customer, and they might help direct the customer in different ways to do, you know what might help? This might help with that. Or I've heard something about this store. They might be able to help you with that, or this solution. And they're building up a relationship. And what does that say to the customer? It wows the customer. It means the customer is thinking, you know what? Those Zappos guys are great. They helped me with my purchase, my shoes. And you know what? I was able to solve another problem. They're just happy to talk. Now, it seems a bit odd, but it's effective because what they're doing is they're reducing customer anxiety. And it extends beyond that because the staff members are empowered to do other things. They can have discretionary spend. But there are, as there are in all organizations, there are myths and stories. There are stories like the customer ringing up in a panic because shoes that she had ordered for a wedding. In fact, I think this particular story was adapted, it was co-opted into the movie The Intern with Anne Hathaway and Robert De Niro. Customer rang up, there was a problem with the shoes and that were delivered, and the wedding was the next day or something, and the Zappos employee is able to turn around and say, hang on a second, let's see what we can do here. And said, okay, listen, I've got a replacement pair, I've got the right size, here we go, we can solve this problem. These are now on their way to you, they'll be delivered in 12 hours, or we're putting them on expedited courier, and you will have them first thing in the morning, and gets them there in time. And other examples of situations like that, where maybe the company has screwed up and they're fixing it, but they're also able to do other things. And they're able to say, you know what, and because of this, I'm going to send you a $50 voucher or to do whatever you like. Other cases, what's the other one? The customer rang up, quiet, shy, wanted to know could they return some shoes. The customer said, no problem. And it turns out that the shoes had been purchased for the customer's mother or father or somebody who had passed away, and they passed away before the shoes arrived. So they wanted to return them back for a refund. And the customer service rep was able to say, hold on, don't worry about it. look, this is not the time for you to worry about any of this sort of stuff. Keep the shoes, cancel the charge. The charge is now cancelled. Don't worry about it. Keep the shoes, give them to somebody else who might need them. And ends the call. And then follows up by sending flowers to the customer because they have this discretionary spend. Sending flowers and with a nice message and sorry to hear our sympathies or whatever. Little touches like that. Now, this doesn't happen with every customer, obviously. It's not every customer has that sort of a situation. But it's because the customer rep is empowered to do these sort of things. They don't have to go seek permission for some of this discretionary spend. They are empowered to solve the customer's problems, to help the customer deal with whatever's happening. And it costs them money. But do you think that customer is ever going to buy shoes anywhere else? Do you think that customer is going to come back and spend more with Zappos in the future? Do you think that customer is going to remember their experience and how far the company went? So they're going to build a really good relationship with those customers. So if you ring up, if you don't like the shoes, you ring up and tell them that they were from somebody else on the side, and there's a stroke to be pulled. Of course, you will have some people who will take advantage, but in the main, most people aren't like that. And Zappos is looking for repeat customers. And their system, their data, is going to help them identify who are the repeat customers. And what they know from their data is they know they've got repeat customers because they can look at who's buying our shoes and like how much is a customer worth to us. So they know this works for them. They know they're getting huge fundamental repeat business. They're able to expand their offerings. Zappos is about 20 years old as a company. They were, after about 10 years, they were bought by Amazon. So Amazon looked around and saw this company and thought, these guys are doing really well. So they bought Zappos, which was only had about, I don't know how many employees, not massive anyway, maybe a few hundred. And it was bought for $1 billion. Now, Zappos has had ups and downs. There have been some other issues where they've changed the culture or they've messed with the culture on occasion. But 10 years ago, it was bought for about $1 billion. And Amazon, who bought it, basically left it alone, left it as a cash cow because they didn't want to mess with the culture. So it worked for Zappos and it worked for other businesses as well. That idea of customer relationship, customer retention. So if you look down the chart on the right here, these are all the ways that we want to try and retain our customers. We want our customers to spend more money with us. We want them to come back and to be repeat customers. So things like keeping the highest standard of customer services. If we screw up on customer services, we can lose a customer, or we damage the relationship and it's harder to improve it. Build and constantly maintain the relationship with the customer. Personalization where possible. And that's where the data comes into it. That's where our data banks and where companies are finding information about us and using that information in conversations and in emails and in campaigns, saying, look, we know you like this here. We've got this special offer. It's just for our customers who like these sort of things. Or we see you bought this thing. We're thinking you don't have to buy this. Maybe it's a free gift. Or maybe if you've been a good customer, here's a bonus voucher. Something out of the blue as well. And it builds the relationship. But it's also about personalization. Dear Shane, not dear customer, dear Shane. Appreciate the client. Clearly define and set customer expectations everywhere in the business. Zappos does that with the recruitment thing we talked about. Obviously, we're getting more and more into using social media, collecting feedback, keeping your website, mobile app, and purchasing process customer friendly, not up to date, customer friendly. Make it easy for the customer to do what they want to do. Don't have too many clicks. We know this works. We know that because you can track the data. So if you've got too many clicks between somebody looking for something and completing a purchase, we can see with the data that people drop off at each stage. So you want to reduce the number of steps, but make it easier for the customer to do what they want to do, to give them their solution as easily as possible. For example, with this membership organization I'm doing some work with, we're just coming off of this paper membership piece to a digital one. And this thing is really simple. So we're sending out a link. Here's the form. Fill in your details on the form. You get an automatic email back with the payment link in it. You click on that. You put your payment in, you're done. Now, we haven't got the money to do a sophisticated where it's actually all in one. So you put your details in and payment all in one go, because that's the next level. But we're adapting existing free technology or simple to use processes to make it as easy as possible for members to join this organization. Become the customer source of know-how. That's like I said about Zappos. This idea that I know somebody who knows the answer and somebody reaching out to us even if there's no business in it for us, even if there's no sale in it for us, if we solve that customer's problem, or we solve their referrals problem, we give them some information that's useful, we're going to hear back from them. We're going to become the favored point of contact. Not everything will lead to new business or new transactions, but some of it certainly will. And so managing our customers as a portfolio. So these are the things that we're aiming for. We should be aiming to do these things and build on these strategies to try and retain customers, to keep customers. Another way of looking at it is, let's understand why somebody becomes our customer. What is it that they're interested in? Why are they our customer? Because if we understand that, we can find more of them. Again, that's just another version of the same thing. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to build our relationship with our customers, understand them better, and keep them coming back. This sort of customer value optimization process. Let me just see it. Where is that? Here. This is the customer value optimization process. I think we should have covered this before somewhere. The idea that as we prospect and we reach out and we try to build our base, it's this funnel effect that we're reaching out, we're doing things to get people interested in us, whether it's virtually, whether it's face-to-face, whether it's networking, whether it's Instagram or LinkedIn or by email, that we're bringing people into this funnel and we're offering them something to get them to move to the next stage on. We're giving them something away. We're giving them free days, free samples. Retailers have been doing this for years. You go to a grocery store and you find little stands with, here's a taster. Why don't you taste this cheese or this biscuit or this juice? Here's a free taste. Have a taste. You like it? So we've got this on special offer today. They've been doing this in grocery stores for decades. We're now doing it online. So we're bringing people in, offering them something to get them involved into this process, then offering them something to get them to commit to being a customer, a small transaction, then trying to upscale that into a bigger transaction, and then getting into the repeat business. That's what we're talking about. We might look at ways of appraising customers in this regard, because this is where it's going to feed into the data. One of the ways that we want to do this is we do have to assess our customers on an ongoing basis. And this is complex, and this is beyond this module, but it might be something you want to start thinking about for the future. Having some sort of appraisal of our customers and ranking them. So maybe having some scores that we use to measure our customer service and also their engagement. So we might look at net promoter scores, let our customers rate us. See how often our customers are referring us, or see how many of our customers are giving us Google reviews or reviews on this side or that side. Now, I know reviews can be corrupted. That I could turn around and say, look, I need you to go and put 50 reviews up. Or we get somebody in some server farm or some hacker somewhere, I need you to go in there and put up like 400 reviews over 3 months that show us getting better and better. I know you can buy that sort of stuff. And so reviews we take them with a pinch of salt. But we also know that genuine customers can give us reviews too. And if we're smart about it, we can identify those customers and we can see, are we meeting their expectations? And we can learn and we can help, that can help us with future engagements with them. We might have customer satisfaction scores. Maybe we ask our customers, the key thing is we ask our customers, how are we doing? Are we doing okay? Are you happy with the service? So I don't know if you guys have it here. I know I've noticed this in the last couple of years in some of the stores, the grocery stores here. They have a little stand at the door. And it's a little thing with 4 buttons on it, 4 smiley faces. One green, which is very smiley, one lime, which is half a smile, one yellow, which is no smile, tiny frown, and one red, which is big frown. And the idea is very simple. As you're walking out the store, you just tap one of the buttons. Now, kids might tap all of them, but it doesn't matter. It's not that scientific, but it is an initial capture of the customer satisfaction on their way out of the store. So you tap it, you tap it, you tap it. If 1,000 customers go through the store each day and half of them tap the thing, you've got 500 data points. And think about it. You can tell what time of day they're tapping. You can then what frequency are they, more in the morning, more in the afternoon, more happy in the morning, more sad in the morning. Again, all these sort of things. You're starting to capture some information. We can do the same thing in other ways. Websites often come back a little pop-up, tell us what you think. Most of the time, most of us, let's get rid of it. But sometimes we'll get some responses, or we'll give some responses. I think you tend to give responses in one of 2 scenarios. One where you're really annoyed and you send a flamer, or 2, you're really impressed and you think, that deserves a little bit of my time. I'm really happy, thanks very much. Both of which are valuable responses to the client, to the business. Either we know we're screwing up or we know we're doing quite well. And what can we learn from that? Because with all of these things, We're smart, we can tie it back to the transactions. We can see the campaign, we can see the impacts, we can see the clicks, we can see the transactions, we can see the value of the transactions, and we can learn from all of that. So we might look at things like, how much does it cost us to acquire a new customer versus how much does it cost us to get a repeat customer? Okay, because customer acquisition is expensive. Now we're moving into things like online data points, which is fine as well, but things like churn rate, average handling time, these are all different measures that we can use. Do you know who gets this really well and who uses this really well? Charities, fundraisers. The best charities are exceptional at this. The best charities really know how to work the system. They have to, because their entire income is based on it. Their entire income is based on persuading somebody to give money for nothing, effectively, to give money to support a cause where they're not getting something back directly. So they have to be really good at it. They have to be really good at it. And what you see is that they're using CRM systems. They're using software, some of it specialized, to engage, create, manage, foster, grow a donor base. So they do things like donor management, they do campaigns, they do payment integration, and there are packages out there that will enable the charities to do this. They're just variations of CRM systems that we use in other businesses. They're exactly the same, just badged differently, and maybe some different functionality, but it's the same purpose, and the best charities are really good at it. Some charities are good at it, and they're not the best charities. That's a separate issue. But the bigger charities turn out they can run some really effective campaigns, and they look after their donors. The very first thing as a charity you must do. I've asked classes this before. What's the one thing that every business should have? What's the one mandatory thing that a business should have? Does anybody remember that question? What one thing, in order to survive, what does a business absolutely have to have? Customers. A paying customer. That's it. That's the answer. You got to have a paying customer. What does a charity have to have? It absolutely has to have donors. So the very first thing that charities need to do is they need to say thank you to their donors. So when you get a donation, you need to say thank you to your donor so that your donor knows that their donation has been recognized. They get a little thank you. I'm not saying it has to be obsequious or craven or bowing down to, but they get a little bit of acknowledgement. They're happy, they've given some money, that money is going to a cause, they get a thank you, and better still, in time, they get some feedback about what good their donation did. Thank you, with your donation, we were able to do X, Y, and Z. What that does is it makes it easier to ask for the next donation. So charities get this. We could look at something like this. This is a whole donation management system. So let me just blow this up a little bit. We've got mail campaigns, phone campaigns, online campaigns, special events. These are all different types of campaigns that we might run in a charity organization. So let's take a phone campaign where you may get some of these calls. Somebody rings up, less so now, more, there tend to be more mail, email, and online. But somebody rings up to make a donation, or we make an outbound call looking for a donation. Somebody send us a check. They do a direct debit right there and then, or they do a funds transfer. So they ring up to do this. The phone is answered by somebody. We complete the donation form according to their instructions and so on. In this case, they make 2 copies, send one to the donor and so on. Again, this is quite a detailed internal process for managing it. If it's mail, stuff comes in into the mail. We place it in the fundraising inbox and they take it on. Online, we run a campaign with a website donation. We print the notification and it follows up. Actually, website donations, I always think are a little bit, because on a website, on a web page, if somebody makes a payment, you can set it up so they get an automatic email. Everybody knows it. The system is doing it. It's not a person. What's really nice is if they get a handwritten note, or they get a follow-up email, or they get a letter from the charity afterwards, maybe with a little post-it on, listen, thanks very much, here's your receipt, thanks very much for your donation. All of that is managing the customer engagement. So there's entry points. Again, this is how the system works. Look at things that are happening. So we receive it, comes into the system, we process it through the staff, through whatever sort of payment mechanism, we send thank yous. We send thank yous out. And then we may follow that up with some additional work to seed the fundraising thing for the next time. Charities get it. They really know how this works. Here's an example. This is a screen print from a system called Thank You, THANKU. And it is a CRM database for charities developed by a company in the UK. Now, I think it's a bit overkill, to be honest. I think it's a bit too complex because I've used it for a while and it's unwieldy. It is basically Salesforce. It's the same as Salesforce. So you can create a database of donors and you can search a database by donor, you can search by a reference number, you can search it by donations. But what it does is it enables you to run all of your engagements through this database. You should be able to set it up so if you email a donor, you do it from the database, it's automatically attached to their record in the database. If they send you a donation, it gets coded, it gets assigned to their account. So we can see how many donations they've given, how often they've given a donation, how much they've given. If they send an email into us, if we set our systems up right, it can be a little bit complex. When you set up right, the email coming in gets automatically added to their account. So we're building up a record. So in this case, with Sally, we can find a whole range of information about Sally. We can also cross-reference with other potential donors. It's getting a bit scary now when we think about data protection. But even if we just stick with Sally, and we can see that, you know what, Sally has given us money every year for the last 5 years. She's responded to our Christmas appeal every year. We've written to her, and she sent us €50 the first 3 years. Then the fourth year, she only sent us €25, but last year she sent us €100. So what might that tell us? What that might tell us is, first of all, she's really committed to our cause. So we should nourish this relationship. We should make sure to send her a thank you letter. We should make sure to include her in emails and newsletters, assuming that she's ticked the right box from a data protection point of view. And we can possibly deduce that something happened 2 years ago. She had less money. She only gave us €25. Either we screwed up or she had a personal crisis, but it's become more relevant. She's bounced back and doubled her usual gift in the last year. So maybe what we should be saying to Sally is, look, Sally, we're running a special campaign in Easter here, first one-off campaign. We've noticed you've given us money at Christmas and we really appreciate it. Would you be able to contribute to this campaign where we're looking to raise money for this purpose? So it might be time for us to upgrade Sally to being a multi-donor per year, because we're going to get her again at Christmas anyway. Now that sounds harsh, but it's building a relationship. She obviously is interested in the work we're doing. So we shouldn't be embarrassed and we shouldn't feel unafraid. We shouldn't feel afraid to ask for more donations. All she can do is say no. But if we do it, what we're doing is we're building the relationship. We're bringing her further in. And what we might do is we're also then, if we're a really good charity, a really effective charity, they'll be thinking way down the road. What they really want to do is they want to be in Sally's will. So when Sally passes away, that in Sally's will, she leaves us some money from her estate, which is a new thing that's been happening in the US and in Europe lately. And again, it sounds kind of icky, but it is deepening the relationship. And it's not saying she has to by any means, but it's deepening the relationship. And we're saying is, you know what? This cause is really important to you. You like giving us money and helping us out because actually you're helping the cause. You're helping solve the issue, bring about the change we're looking to make. And you can make a big impact on that with a donation from your estate if and when you pass on. So these guys really get this whole customer engagement thing, this customer management thing. So we can learn a lot about customer relationships and customer management by looking at some of the charities. You know, you might know somebody who has suffered some sort of thing, or you might have somebody who's had some experience, or you might have a friend who works with or explains about the cause, or it's just something you're interested in. So it may be that you think, you know what, I always give them some money at this time of year, or I like to help out when I can, or I volunteer, or whatever, because charities thrive on that. But it's actually very similar to the relationship that you have with a business that supplies you with groceries or clothes or IT or something else. They're looking for the same sort of engagement. It's not a charity, we get that, but they're looking to solve your problem, whatever problem you have that they can solve. You're looking to do that and to deepen that relationship with you so that you do it more over time. So they should be doing the same sort of thing. So UNICEF, so the United Nations something Child Fund. It's the children's version, the children's fund anyway, UNICEF. And they're a global organization. They're all around the world. There's a UNICEF office here, there's a UNICEF there, and they do some very good work. There are other charities. We have a couple of Irish-based multinational charities, Concern and Trócaire. They're two multinational charities. UNICEF, they call you on your birthday. That's really good. That's a really good idea. So they ring you up and they say, happy birthday and blah, 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 and they tell you what they're about, and they may ask you for some money, do they? But they know it's your birthday. That's really smart. That's really smart. And and you do because you like the charity and you feel you're doing something, right? You feel you're helping contribute. And they know that you do it every year because they ring you every year on your birthday. That's a really good relationship in both ways, effectively. The things that damage that are when the charity falls into a scandal or something comes out. So we've got a charity at the moment in Dublin and it's going to be closed down. 6 months ago, there were great stories about this organization doing great work. As I've said before, I chair a homeless charity. So this is another homeless charity. We knew there was something wrong with this charity. It was nothing to do with us, but the word on the street was there was something going on. So we were keeping our distance. And it turns out that the guy who set it up and the guy who ran the charity, he did two very bad things, or seemed to do two very bad things. And as a result, that charity is completely falling over. And the board has collapsed, the charities and the regulators looking at it and they're finding things, and there's our concerns around it. There are others, not just us, there are others. So we've stood back and, well, because it's to do with us, but it affects us because it's a public failure. And partly it involves potentially missing money, that money has gone missing. So the public looks at this and says, there's another charity, a corrupt people running charity, taking our money for what should be a good cause. And then they look and they see us and they see other organizations. So it affects us, even though we're doing nothing wrong, it damages the perception of charities in general. So it has an impact on us. So partly our challenge is, how do we respond to that? How do we demonstrate to our donors, look, something really bad happened over there, and we don't condone that whatsoever. And here's what we do to make sure that that doesn't happen to us or doesn't happen in our organization. That's what we have to do as a result. So there are challenges in all of this. Good charities are as good at this as anybody. And it's about learning about the customers. It's about being organized, and it's about optimizing the relationship. I'll give you an example. Here's a piece I did with an Irish charity. Now, this particular charity was old. It was tired. It was stuck. It was not sexy. So arthritis is an issue. It affects a lot of people, but it's not, most of it is not deadly. There are some very serious cases, obviously, but an awful lot of people have arthritis and it doesn't really stop them doing what they're doing. It is painful, of course. There are different types of it, certainly, but it's not lung cancer. It's not pancreatic cancer or brain cancer. It's not ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease or some of these other horrific conditions. But that doesn't mean that it's not a valid cause in and of itself. But the problem with the organization is it had a donor base. It hadn't been managed properly or effectively at all. We were trying to rejuvenate that. And partly the way we did that was we launched this affinity scheme. And the idea behind this was to recognize our customers are valuable, our donors are valuable. This affinity scheme is exactly what other businesses are doing too. This, like Starbucks, your loyalty scheme. You buy 6 coffees in Starbucks, you get 7 ones free, or whatever the thing is. It was the same idea. We said, we're going to launch this affinity scheme. So we're going to give our members this affinity card. And with this affinity card, they would get some discounts. So we had to line up some partner organizations. So we lined up some partner organizations, retailers, businesses, whom the Arthritis Ireland members, so people with arthritis, where they were likely to or potentially to purchase things, to engage with. So, for example, we had a chain of pharmacies on board. And what the chain of pharmacies said was, okay, if you use your Arthritis Ireland Affinity card in our pharmacies, we'll give you a 10% discount on X, Y, and Z. And so it was pretty much a 10% discount across the board and everything except prescriptions, I think, because prescriptions are tied in with a government scheme. We had a deal with a hotel complex in the middle of the country where, which was aimed at the 50 plus age group. And it was if your customers, if your members book a holiday with us, a short stay, like a 3-night stay for a get out of town or break with us, we will give them a complimentary upgrade, or we'll give them a 5% discount, or we'll give them a special rate, whatever it was. So in other words, your Arthritis Ireland card, your loyalty card, your affinity card allowed you to access savings elsewhere. That's what we were trying to do. So the concept with our members was we wanted to grow our membership base. The more members you have, more annual fees, the more income the organization has, the more good it can do. So we wanted to grow this. So one of the ways we were trying to do this, rather than just asking people to become a member, was we really want you to become a member, and here's the cause and everything else. But we also think that we can do this a different way. We think we can introduce this affinity card so you can be a proud member. And with this, there are some organizations that are going to give you a little bonus. They're going to give you a reward if you decide to use your card there. Doesn't cost us anything, doesn't cost you anything, cost them a little bit of a discount, but they're also hoping that they'll get some extra business out of it. So it was a bit of a win scenario, because this is exactly what other businesses are doing. Loyalty. You get your little vouchers, you get your discount codes, you get your points or whatever. It's the same idea. And it's a way of encouraging repeat business, is a way of building the longer term relationship, whether it's a customer or a donor. It's the same thing. It costs a little bit to set up. You need organization behind it. You need to manage the data. The information is crucial. And with that helps you manage the whole situation. So that's another idea. Ultimately, it's about achieving customer excellence. I'm just conscious of time, so I'm going to skip on a little bit and just talk about, watch out for some future trends. This will all have implications for stuff down the line. So let's just run through this very quickly. We've covered pretty much all of this. There's your assignment brief. So you should try and relate this to a real world organization you're familiar with, or if not, you can be the CRM manager of a small insurance business. Different ways that organizations deal with your customers. We talked about a number of different ways throughout, and we all know that we've all had experience of this. We deal with, in terms of channels, phone, email, live chat now, social media, on-site, on our website. We do self-service checkouts. We do other bits and pieces. On our websites, we may have FAQs as well. So we deal with people in person. We also deal with them electronically, and increasingly, it's more virtually and at a distance. Good customer service is the ability of customer-facing teams to listen to customers, potential customers, and to identify their problems and to solve their problems in a timely manner. We talked about this thing here, this competitive advantage from either improving efficiency or quality, etc. We talked about what do customers want when we look at different industries. So it's always good to pull back. You look at a business, think, what does somebody actually want? So if you're the manager of an insurance business, what does the customer actually want? They don't want a piece of paper with a policy. They want peace of mind. They want to know that if something happens, they're not going to be distraught or driven into financial ruin. They're looking for insurance in case, risk management, lifting their worries. That's what insurance actually is. So we have to learn what the customer wants and needs. We need to ask the customer. We need to be clear what business we're in and who our customers are and what they want. So we have to ask the question. We talked about Fergal Quinn, and we gave some of the examples around things that he did in his business as he built his business up. And as I said, he had a global reputation as a retailer, even though it was only a small Irish chain of retail stores. We talked about this today, assessing the customer. We talked about Aldi and Lidl, and we talked about some of the things they do. I know we talked about it before. We talked about some of the things they've done and they required their suppliers to do and their staff to do to enable the customers to get what they want. Satisfaction. We'll skip it. We talked about IKEA and Walmart. The second part is what sort of skills and practices will support customer retention. It's a couple of key concepts we have to have here around customer lifetime value and prediction of the net worth. Really, we need to recognize that it's over time that we get real benefit. If we're looking for a quick win to maximize the income right now, we're not really paying attention to what the future might be. We talked about the challenges of the call center. And again, some of them are really good. Some of them are useful. They know what they're at. Some of them, it's all about keeping the cost down, which I think is the wrong way to go. It's the wrong focus. It should be building the relationship like Zappos, which means we need a really good strategy around customer relationship management, CRM systems. We talked about that because we're aiming at customer retention. We also want customer retention. So really what we want is customer value optimization leading into customer retention, which gives us a lifetime customer value. We haven't got time to talk about Nordstrom. We'll capture it again. We talked about the fundraising side because they really make it work, as does Zappos. So that's 3 examples of customers from different posts. We talked about a couple of examples already. We talked about Zappos, talked about a few charities. There's one there for the loyalty scheme, and that's pretty much it, I think. So there's the points. We didn't get a chance to write some notes on there. I know that was a really rushed through piece at the end, but we've covered all of those elements. So this is just harking back to things we covered in the course. I'll see you in the next module, hopefully. All right, best of luck. Bye-bye. Stay safe, please.